Hi players, bonjour from Geneva, and welcome back to the second part of How to Play Company of Heroes, the board game, the second edition. Before we're diving back into this video, if you like the content that you're seeing or learned something new, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's an absolutely free way to help me, and it does help me a lot. And with that guys, let's go to the damage phase. In the damage phase, we're going to have a few steps, but in general, this is the phase where we're going to assign damage to different elements, and pay attention that I'm saying elements and not only units, because we'll be able to assign damage also to buildings and even to battlefield defenses. In order to assign damage, we'll need to hold up two criterias. The first one is the range, and the second one is the line of sight. The range is specified for each unit on its building card. For example, the mortar team that we have right over here for the American Army has the range of 5. The second criteria that we're having is the line of sight. Now the sight range by default is going to be 2 unless otherwise was specified. But it's not enough to be just 2 hexagons away from a unit, you also need to have a line of sight. That means that nothing disturbs that line of sight. If we want to measure a line of sight, we need to draw an imaginary line between the center of the hexagon of the unit that is attacking to the center of the hexagon of the unit that is being attacked. So let's see a few examples and understand what does it mean. Over here with this unit, if it wants to shoot over on this tank right over here, there is absolutely no problem because A, we do have here the distance of 2, right? The imaginary line that is being drawn over here, and nothing is disturbing that line of sight. And also it is in range, since again we have here the distance of 2. Here on the other side, if this unit would like to shoot over to this one, even though it is in range and also has the distance of 2, it cannot really see it because we have this building right over here that disturbs the imaginary line that we're going to draw from here to see if this unit can see this mortar team. In a third example, even though this Wehrmacht unit is in range from the mortar team, because as we remember, the mortar team has the range of 5 and it is situated in the firing arc, the sight is too big for this unit to see this one, since we have here 1, 2, and 3 hexagons away. We can overcome this difficulty if we have a unit that is spotting another unit. For example, if we're going to have this jeep right over here, this Wehrmacht unit is now visible to this jeep, and that means that this jeep is spotting this unit for this mortar team. Now we have a few things that can affect different units and increase their sight and also the range. Let's start with this die that we have right over here, and if a unit has this die, either it was spawned like this, like we have over here with the MG42 team of the Wehrmacht, or this unit was upgraded, which is something that we're going to talk about in the supply phase, then their sight range is going to be improved by 1 hexagon. A second effect that we have is this one that is called camouflage, and that means that a unit that is camouflaged will be able to be spotted by different units only if it is situated in an adjacent hexagon to that camouflaged unit. To counter that, some units will be able to spawn or upgrade to 2 eyes, like we have with the major unit of the American Army. As we can see, it is also written here that it spots camouflaged units. What you need to know that spotting camouflaged units with 2 eyes is only going to be from a distance of 4 hexagons. Another effect that we have is this one, and as you already probably guessed it, it's going to increase the range of a specific unit by 1 hexagon. And sometimes, in order to save a little bit of place on the different trays, we're going to have this side of a die that says that we're going to increase not only the sight range, but actually the firing range of the unit. But this, of course, is equal to 2 dice that show the 2 different icons that we have. The last effect that we're going to see with one of these dice is something that is called smoke. Now, smoke is something that is going to disturb a line of sight. So, for example, if we're going to have an effect of smoke right over here on this hexagon, now this unit cannot see this unit and vice versa. Now, we're going to see here a lot of examples that are going to cover all of the important things in the damage phase, but let's go back and start with the first step of the damage phase, which is that the machine guns are going to assign damage and pin other units. So let's concentrate on what we have right over here. This MG42 unit of the Wehrmacht now needs to choose which unit of the Americans they're going to apply their damage to. Now it can apply damage to either one of these units because they do have an increased sight, right? What we can see with this die right over here. And both of these units are in their firing arcs. So once they have decided on which unit they would like to apply the damage, that unit is going to be pinned. And we're going to take this die and we're going to apply it to the tray of that specific unit. Important to understand that only infantry units can be pinned. Pinning is basically a negative effect that is going to prevent from the pinned infantry units to assign any kind of damage, to neutralize or to capture points. Again, we're going to talk about it in the supply phase, and this effect is going to be removed only when we're finishing the supply phase. This effect can also be disrupted if this unit that is pinning the other unit is going to be destroyed in the damage phase, or the line of sight is going to be disrupted. Now, in order to understand what kind of damage the MG42 unit is going to apply to the American unit, we can take a look at their card and we're going to see what kind of damage they're going to apply. Now, in general, we have 4 types of damage. The first one is anti-infantry, which is exactly the type of damage that we're going to apply over here. So we're going to take this die and we're going to place it right next to the unit just like this. The second type of damage that we have is armor piercing. The third type of damage that we have is high explosives. And the fourth type of damage that we have is fire. Don't worry, we're going to cover those as well. Now, I just want to make sure that you understand that even though this unit is in the range of sight and the range of damage from the MG42 unit, the pin negative effect will not apply to it because it applies only to the unit that the machine gun has applied damage to. And on top of that, heavy machine weapon teams that are already set up cannot be pinned. So if, for another example, this unit would have been already set up, that means that even if they apply damage to this team, so we're going to have this anti-infantry die right over here, it will not pin this unit because it is a heavy machine gun weapon teams and it's already set up. The second step that we're going to have in the damage phase is that we're going to assign all the possible damage for all the different units, and also we're going to collect some experience points. Now, for each new unit that is being assigned damage to, the team that assigned the damage is going to receive 1 experience point. In our case, the Wehrmacht are going to have 1 experience point because they have assigned damage to this new unit right over here. In a different case, if we would have had this light vehicle over here and they would also assign damage to this infantry unit, they would not receive another experience point because they already received 1 when they assigned the damage right over here. When we're earning experience points, we're going to take this white cube right over here and we're going to place it in the designated place for experience points on the HQ board of that specific player. In the Wehrmacht place, since they now just receive 1 experience point, they're going to take this cube and they're going to place it right over here. So let's continue and assign all the possible damage that we can see right now on the board. So since we already started over here, let's see what's going on. And we know that this unit, since it's pinned, it will not be able to apply damage. This heavy machine gun is not yet set up, so it will not be able to assign damage. Moving on over here, this unit will not be able to apply damage to this unit since they cannot see it because of the building that we have right over here in the middle. Moving on to the mortar team over here, we're going to talk about something that is called high explosive damage. Now, high explosive damage is an indirect damage that we can assign to different units. Indirect damage means that basically this unit is going to shoot above different obstacles that we have on the battlefield. Usually it's going to be the buildings that we have right over here. So let's see how does this work. Let's see first of all what is the firing arc of the mortar team right over here. And we know that we're starting from here, even though it cannot target the first hexagon in front of them, just like we've talked about in the maneuver phase. So it's going to start over here and it's going to go to the left onto the right, just like this. And that means basically that this unit right over here is in their firing arc. Now, obviously you can imagine that this unit cannot see this unit, right? It's too far from it, but we have this unit right over here that can spot this unit for the mortar team. So now basically this mortar team can assign damage to the MG42 unit of the Wehrmacht right over here. So what they're going to do is to take this die with the high explosives and they're going to put it right next to this unit. Don't worry, we're going to resolve the damage after we're going to assign it for all the units. Now the indirect damage basically means that even though that we have this building between these units, since it is an indirective damage, they will be able to shoot above the building. Now since this mortar team has just applied damage to a new unit, they're going to take 1 experience point and they're going to add it to their HQ board. Moving on to this unit, it cannot assign damage to any other unit since it is out of sight and range. And we're going to move over here to this Panzer Grenadier. Now the Panzer Grenadier unit has 2 types of damage that they're going to assign. Even if we have 2 types of damage that we can assign, we have to assign it to 1 singular unit. We're going to have something different when we're going to talk about the heavy vehicles, but don't worry, we're going to get there. So right now, the Panzer Grenadier unit is going to assign 1 armor-piercing damage to the Sherman tank over here, and also anti-infantry. Now for the veterans of you, you already know that this anti-infantry damage is not going to do anything to the tank, but we're going to get there soon enough. Now again, since we just applied damage to a new unit, the Wehrmacht are going to take 1 more experience point. Now on purpose, I'm going to skip for 1 moment on the Sherman tank and we're going to see it soon enough. Moving on to this light vehicle right over here, the only unit that they will be able to assign damage to is this light vehicle of the Americans right over here, this Jeep. Because this infantry unit of the Americans is too far for this light vehicle in terms of range. The line of sight to the tank is being disrupted by this building, so the direct damage cannot be applied over here. But this Jeep is completely open for them to apply damage to. So when we're looking at what kind of damage they're going to apply to this Jeep, it is anti-infantry. So we're going to take this die and we're going to place it right over here. And that is something, of course, that is going to earn them 1 more experience point. Moving on to this Jeep right over here, they're going to assign damage to this infantry unit of the Wehrmacht. Their damage is anti-infantry, so we're going to place this die right over here. And that is something, of course, that is going to credit them with 1 experience point. This infantry unit is going to assign their damage to the Wehrmacht. So again, we have over here anti-infantry damage. Let's place it right over here next to it. But again, it's not going to credit them an experience point because we already received 1 when the Jeep assigned damage to this unit. So it's not a new unit that we're assigning damage to. Now the Wehrmacht unit is going to try and perform some sort of a miracle, and they're going to assign their damage to the Jeep as well. So we're going to take this damage and we're going to place it right over here. And again, it's not going to credit them 1 experience point because we already targeted this unit. And now I want to go over to this heavy vehicle that we have right over here and show you something that is a little bit different. As you can see with their Sherman tank, we have here also 2 types of damage, but unlike the other units, that means not heavy vehicles, we can see that we have this type of iconography over here. That means that even though the official firing arc of the Sherman tank starts from here and go like this, they will be able to target units 360 degrees around. But in order for you to see the difference, let's take, for example, the Panzer IV that we have for the Wehrmacht and place it right over here, for example. Now the Panzer has also 2 icons, but pay attention that the anti-infantry damage only has this straight arrow. That means that they will be able to assign this damage, the anti-infantry damage, only in their firing arc. In our case, again, it's going to start from here and is going to go to the left and to the right. But the armor piercing damage, they will be able to again apply 360 degrees. So basically heavy vehicles like we just saw with the Sherman and the Panzer IV will be able to assign their damage to two different units. So going back to our example with the Sherman, they will decide to apply their 2 anti-infantry damage to this unit right over here of the Wehrmacht. So we're going to add these 2 damage dice right over here. Guys, I'm sorry for cutting the video like this in the middle, but I did here kind of a huge mistake that was caught only post-production to this video. So obviously, when the Sherman tank is assigning damage to this Wehrmacht infantry unit right over here, it is not possible because it is situated outside of the Sherman's range, right? We have here 1, 2, 3 hexagons away, and the range of the Sherman tank is only 2 hexagons. So I apologize for that. This is obviously a mistake, but repairing this mistake kind of means that I need to start doing the video all over again, and it's really quite a lot of work. So again, I apologize. Remember that we always need to measure the range between units. This is a mistake, should not have happened, but we are going to continue with this example. Thank you for the understanding and enjoy the rest of the video. And their armor piercing damage to this unit right over here. Now, while their damage to this unit is not going to credit them with experience point, the armor piercing damage that they assign to this unit is going to give them 1 more experience point. Now that we have finished assigning the damage, we're going to actually resolve it. In order to resolve it, we're going to use something that we have at the back of the 3rd tier building that we have. It is this damage matrix that we have with this table. Every time that we see this kind of icon, if this type of damage is going to be applied to this type of unit, they will not have any kind of defense, and that means that they will take 1 damage. So that means that infantry is going to take 1 damage immediately every time they're being assigned anti-infantry damage, unless of course they have some cover or they're inside buildings and so on, but we'll get to it soon enough. For light vehicles on the other side, if they're going to be assigned armor piercing damage, they will take 1 damage for sure, just like we can see over here that they don't have any kind of defense. But if they're going to be assigned anti-infantry damage, they will roll 1 defense die. So now let's keep this table right next to us and start assigning the damage as we can see right over here, and also talk about covers and so on. So we're going to again start with what we can see right over here. This anti-infantry in general, if we didn't have this cover of this green line right over here, they would have taken 1 damage immediately. But they do have this cover over here, and it's important to say that only infantry can profit from this kind of defense, or the yellow defense as we have right over here. So they are going to take 2 dice because green cover is a heavy cover, unlike the yellow line that we have over here with only light cover, and they're going to roll 2 defense dice. When you're rolling a defense die, and I'm not talking about high explosive right now, we have 2 possible outcomes. If we have the green icon or the black icon, that means that this unit did not take any damage. On the other side, if we have the red icon, that means that this unit did take damage. Now, since this unit is profiting from heavy cover, they will be able to roll 2 defense dice. So it's enough for them to roll only 1 of this outcome in these 2 dice in order not to take damage. So if, for example, they're rolling their dice and they have 1 success and 1 failure, since we only had here 1 damage, it's enough for them to have only 1 success in order not to take this damage. If on the other side they're going to roll the 2 defense die and this is the outcome, that means 2 failures, they are going to take damage and remove 1 of this figurine back to their general supply. So let's see how it rolls, shall we? Let's take these 2 defense dice, we roll them, and we have here 2 success. I remind you that we needed only 1, so no damage was taken by this unit. Now, just to make sure that we understand, this unit profited from this cover because the damage was assigned from this direction. If the unit that was assigning the direction would have been in a different place, like here for example, we can see that shooting from this hexagon to this one does not meet any kind of heavy cover over here, so they would not profit from this cover. Now let's move on, talk about high explosive damage like we have over here. Now this unit is still going to profit from this heavy cover, but we have here a few differences. First of all, the attacker is going to roll all the high explosive damage that they applied. In our case, it's only one. And we have here three possible outcomes. If it's green, it means that they're going to assign to this unit 2 damage. If it's black, it's going to be only 1. And if it's red, it means that it's a complete miss. This damage dice needs to be rolled before this unit is going to roll for defense. So let's roll a die and see what's going to happen. As you can see right now, we had here a green icon, so that means that 2 damage is going to be applied to this unit. But since they are profiting from heavy cover, they will roll 2 dice in order to see how much damage they're going to take. So we're going to take now 2 defense die, we're going to roll them. And we have here 2 blacks, that means 2 successes. That means that they have avoided the 2 damage that was supposed to be applied to them. But if we would have had here the outcome of only 1 red, they would have taken 1 damage. And if it was 2 red, that means 2 damage to this unit. Let's move on to what we can see right over here. Now infantry, if we're looking at the damage matrix, are going to have 1 defense from armor piercing. And on top of that, we can see that they're going to profit from a heavy cover. That means 2 defense dice. So we're going to count 1 defense plus 2 defense, that is 3 defense die. So they're going to roll 3 dice, and they need to be honest only 1 success, since they have been applied only 1 armor piercing damage. So let's roll and see what's going to happen. And we do have here 2 success, that means that they avoided this damage right over here. The only way for them to take damage is if they would have rolled 3 red icons, as we can see right over here. But this is not the case, so good for them. Let's move on to this unit right over here, and we're going to have some interesting things. First of all, when we're looking at the matrix, heavy vehicles are completely immune to anti-infantry damage. So this cube we can put back in the supply. It's not going to do anything to the tank. Now we have an armor piercing damage, and we can see that the icon on the matrix is sort of gray, not black like we've seen before. That means that the heavy vehicle is going to profit from a defense die only if it was attacked from the front firing arc of the tank. Since this is not the case and they're being attacked from the rear, they are going to automatically take 1 damage. When this unit is taking damage, we're going to take this die right over here, and from 4 HP, we're going to drop it down to 3 HP. Moving on to the American Jeep that we have right over here, if we're looking at the matrix, we can see that anti-infantry damage is going to give them a defense roll. So we're going to take both of these dice, we're going to roll them and see what is the outcome. And as you can see, we have here 2 red icons. This means that they're going to take 2 damage, and I apologize, I forgot to have this die right over here. And since they have 2 HP, what is happening now that this unit is going to be completely destroyed. When a unit is being destroyed, the army that applied the damage is going to receive immediately 1 victory point. Pay attention that you're moving the victory points in the stockpiles and not in the income. On the other side, the army of the unit that was just destroyed is going to receive 1 experience point. So this one is going to go directly to the American army. Now here we had kind of a cool example with the battlefield defense. So in general, all battlefield defenses have 2 flat health. What does it mean? That if 2 or more total damage is assigned to any target on that hexagon, again, just like we had right over here, this damage was assigned to the Jeep, and we remember that this Jeep was assaulting this hexagon, so that means that they're going to be considered in the same hex, then the battlefield defenses on that hex are going to be destroyed. So this tank trap is going to be destroyed, removed from the board, and back to the general supply. Now let's continue to the last damage that we have right over here. And we can see that this unit was applied 4 anti-infantry damage. Now pay attention that the cover that we have over here in this hexagon is only over here. That means that only if we would have had damage that was assigned from this direction, they would be able to profit from this light cover. But this is not our case, since the damage was assigned from the jeep, from the tank, and from the infantry right over here. So 4 anti-infantry damage, since if we're looking again at the matrix, infantry units are going to take immediately 1 damage for each anti-infantry damage assigned to. This unit is going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 damage, which means that this unit is completely destroyed. It will give the Americans 1 victory point and is going to give the Wehrmacht 1 experience point. So now, since this unit is no longer here, and we remember from the last video that this infantry unit was assaulting this hexagon, their current location is going to be this hexagon right over here. With your permission, I would like to take one more example of what happens if we have in a building an infantry unit and we're going to assign different types of damage to this building. Now, in general, infantry in buildings are going to profit from 3 defense dice. So we're going to place this defense dice right over here. On top of that, if we're looking at the matrix, we can see that infantry is going to profit from 1 defense die if being applied damage from armor piercing. So we're going to add another defense die right over here. So basically 4 defense dice are what this unit is going to roll to see how much damage they're going to take. Before that, of course, we need to check how much of damage we have with the high explosive. Let's roll this die, and we can see that we have here only 1 damage. So now let's roll all the defense dice and see what is going to happen. And we see that we have 2 successes and 2 failures. So in order to resolve the hot mess that we have over here, we're going to take 2 successes that we have over here, and we're going to match to them 2 damage dice that basically unit managed to block. And since now we still have 2 failures, then this unit is going to take 2 damage. What is special with the flame damage that we haven't talked about before, let's assume for 1 second that the defender managed to roll only black or green. That means only successes. In this case, this unit would still take 1 damage because flame damage ignores completely building defense. Now, on top of that, if we're looking at the matrix, we can see that buildings are completely vulnerable for high explosives and for flame. And since this building, of course with the infantry in it, has taken 2 damage from these high explosives and from the flame damage, then the HP is going to drop by 2. And as we can see, that is the only amount of HP that this building has. And that means that this building is going to be destroyed. And from now on, it will be considered as a destroyed building with the purple border that we can see right over here. Now, just for the example, let's say that this unit was not destroyed and we have over here 1 unit that is left. Obviously, the assault has failed, and this unit, or basically any unit, including vehicles, are going to retreat to the nearest hexagon towards a retreating point that is possible to move to. That means, of course, if we don't have any kind of impassable terrain. In our case, this unit would have probably retreated right over here, that is 1 hex closer to the retreating point. Now, something that I forgot to do over here, and I apologize for that, is in step 2, we need to neutralize captured points. Now, what does it mean? Over here in this hexagon, we can see that this point belongs to the Wehrmacht. So this Sherman tank is going to neutralize this point. That means that we're going to remove this flag right over here from the board. Immediately after this happens, the Wehrmacht army needs to adjust their income by deducting 1 manpower and 1 fuel from their incomes. The last sort of damage type that I would like to talk about in the damage phase is high explosive splash damage. Splash damage is an effect that is going to be added to some units by upgrades, for example, to units that cause high explosive damage. So for a completely different example, let's say that this mortar unit has this splash damage. Splash damage is something that is going to affect not only the hexagon that is being targeted, but also all adjacent hexagons. Let's take a small example and see how does it go. Let's imagine that we have this situation right over here, and since this hexagon is visible to this mortar unit because we have this tank that is spotting this hexagon, and of course this is in range for this mortar unit, they're going to shoot over here to this hexagon. What we have basically is splash damage, high explosive that is going to be assigned right over here, and that means that it's going to affect all the units around it. Pay attention that splash damage is not going to trigger the non-building cover that we have in an adjacent hexagons. But also, of course, it is going to affect friendly units. So now, for all the splash damage that is assigned to a specific hexagon, in our case it's only 1, the attacker is going to roll the die just like we've seen before to see if it's a miss, critical, or normal damage. First of all, we should remember that since we are targeting here 2 new units, we're basically going to earn from this immediately 2 experience points. Now it's time to roll the die, and we have 1 damage. This 1 damage is going to affect this unit, this one, and of course also the light vehicle, but the light vehicle is of course going to profit from their natural resistance for high explosives, so now they need to roll 1 die to see if it actually hit them. If they roll the die and they have a success, they're not going to be affected. But of course, if we have a failure, then this light vehicle is going to take 1 damage. And with it, guys, we have finished the damage phase and we're going to move on to the supply phase. In the supply phase, we're going to also have a few steps, and the first one is that we're going to capture the different points that we have. Now, as a reminder, all infantry units will be able to capture points, unless of course they're being pinned. Don't worry, we're going to get there. Also some vehicles with this icon on them, just like we have with the American Jeep. And also emplacements will be able to capture points, but we're not going to cover it in this video. So let's see what are the changes that are going to happen. First of all, this unit, as we've said, is not going to be able to capture this point because it is being pinned. Moving over here, the heavy vehicle, the Sherman, will not be able to capture this point. But over here, what is going to happen is that this infantry unit is going to capture this point and moving it to the control of the Americans. What that means is that the Wehrmacht army will need to adjust again their HQ board and reducing their manpower income and their victory point income. And the Americans are going to do exactly the opposite. They're going to increase their manpower income and victory point income by 1. So when we're looking back at the HQ board of the Wehrmacht, again, we're going to reduce the manpower by 1 and victory point by 1. And we're going to increase exactly those 2 parameters by 1 for the Americans, since they have just captured these points. The second step is that we're going to add to our stockpiles exactly the same numbers that we have right over here with the income. In this case, for the Americans, we're going to add 2 manpower. So from 4, we're going to have 6. When it comes to munition, we're going to add 1. Fuel, we're going to add 1 as well. And also 1 victory point. I remind you that the Americans already had 1 victory point from destroying a unit in the damage phase. The same thing, of course, we're going to have with the Wehrmacht, of course with different parameters, but I'm going to do it off screen. The third step will be to check for victory points and game trigger. So as you remember, in the setup, we have decided what kind of game we would like to play. Short game 18 victory points, medium 21, or the long game for 24 victory points. If one of the players has reached or surpassed the amount of victory points that was agreed upon during setup, that will trigger the end of the game and we can ignore the next steps in the supply phase. Then the teams that controls the most victory capture points, like we have right over here, is going to be awarded 3 extra victory points. If both sides control the same amount of victory capture points, no points are going to be added to either side. Then the player that has the most victory points is the winner, and if still we have a tie, then the team that went first in this round is going to be the winner. But since this is not the case, we're going to continue to the 4th step. In this step, keeping it in the turn order, each player in their turn is going to spend their resources or experience points to purchase new units, upgrade them, and even have a commander or upgrade it. Since the Americans were the first player, they are going to start first. So let's see what are the different things that we can buy and upgrade. Let's start with the most basic thing, and we can purchase the units from the different buildings that are open for us. The cost of each of these units is marked right over here. In our case, it's going to be 4 manpower for either a rifleman or for a mortar team. When we want to buy a specific unit, we simply need to pay the cost. Again, in our case, it's going to be 4 manpower. So from 6, we're going to go down to 2. Then we're going to take this unit and we're going to play it in one of the spawning hexagons that we have on the board. In our case, super simple, it's still the same spawning area that we had at the beginning of the game, so the Americans will be able to add this unit, for example, over here. Now, after one side has purchased a unit, we're going to move to the next player and they will be able to purchase something as well. Another option that we have is to build the next tier building that we have. In our case, it's going to be building number 2, and the cost is written right over here. So once we're paying it, 1 manpower and 2 fuel, we'll be able to flip this card to the other side, and more units are going to be available for us to buy starting from this round right now. Another option that we have, of course, is also to upgrade our units. Now, all the upgrades are written right over here in the second row of each unit, and the price, of course, as well. In the rifleman case, we can pay 3 munition and then add 1 armor piercing or 1 anti-infantry damage. So if we're going to do that, we're going to pay the 3 munition. For this unit, we're going to choose one type of damage just like we've seen before. Let's say that we have chosen the armor piercing, and we're going to add this die to their tray. So the next time that this unit is going to do damage, it's going to do an armor piercing damage on top of the anti-infantry damage that it's going to do from the beginning. The last option that we have to upgrade the unit is by using experience points. Experience points is what we have accumulated during the damage phase, and if you'll excuse me, I kind of forgot to do it in the damage phase, but in each damage phase we'll need to receive 1 experience point just by entering this phase. So now the Americans have 5 experience points that they will be able to upgrade some units with. So over here, if they're going to pay 2 experience points, they will be able to again upgrade the rifleman squad by adding 1 armor piercing damage or anti-infantry. So let's say we did just that. We're going to again take one of these damage dice and we're going to add them to their tray. So now, as you already understood, this unit is going to do 2 anti-infantry damage and 1 armor piercing damage. The last thing that we'll be able to do in this specific step is to either bring into play one of the 3 commanders that we have taken in the setup phase, and that is by paying the amount of experience points as we can see in the leftmost column of that commander card. So for example, if we would like to bring into play this commander right over here, we can see that it's going to cost us 1 experience point. So by paying this 1 experience point, I'm going to take this commander card and I'm going to put it right over here. Pay attention that starting from this moment, I will not be able to change anymore the commander cards, so the other commander cards we can simply put back in the box. In order to symbolize that we have taken this commander, we're going to take one of these cubes and we're going to place it right over here. And that means that the first ability that we have is already unlocked. If we still have experience points, or we can do it actually in other supply phases, we can advance with the commander card that we have. That means that for one more experience point, and I can do it in the same phase as I just took this card right over here, I can pay one more experience point and unlock already the second column that we have right over here. Once a player has decided that in their turn to purchase something they will pass, they will not be able to continue purchase things after the next player is going to play. And once both players have finished their purchases, we're going to move on to the fifth step, and that is to remove retreat and pin dice, and also to perform repairs and reinforcements. What does it mean? Well, first of all, we remember that we have right over here the pin negative effect. Now it's going to be the time to remove it. Also, if we had units that retreated, now if one of these units has arrived one of the retreat points, it will be the time to take out this effect as well. And also we have something that is called repair or reinforcement. First of all, as we remember, we have some units with this wrench sign, just like we saw with the riflemen of the Americans. If they are adjacent to a vehicle that took damage, like we can see with this Jeep right over here, they're going to repair it and they're going to restore 1 HP. Also, if we would have had a wounded unit, like we can see right over here, this rifleman squad with 3 HP, if they are situated in a spawning zone, they will be able to restore this 1 health. Some of the units have this icon that we can see with the upgrade of the Jeep, and that means that if in the supply phase, in this step, there are adjacent to an infantry unit that took damage, they will be able to heal them for 1 HP. And that is it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope that you managed to learn how to play Company of Heroes, the board game 2nd edition. If you learned something new or saw something that you like, I would totally appreciate if you can subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free and it's a huge help for me. Thank you again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.